Metatron. The gods' hammers strike your eardrums. The vibrations shiver you from sky to earth. Your roots spread, gather voices into your trunk, where blue and green meet to create the symphony of the planets and the song of the worms, the whole Whitman universe rotating to the pulse of your sap as it rises and falls. It is enough for me to crawl along the verticals of your dodecahedron like an ant in Wonderland. Is each point an epiphany or a decision? Is it enough to take the hands of other ants and sing the world into and out of existence with Coca-Cola and Nepenthe? Look, a boy with blonde curls sits at a desk and watches a clock. His leg kicks the ticking rhythm against his chair. His fingers curl around that which creates the word in thick letters on lined school paper. Every pencil is carved from your wood. My cat plays with string theory. Time wrinkles. Sometimes it works itself into knots. The boy is a man now. He tunes his cello to your hum. You vibrate his notes up to the gods and out into the world. You write the lyrics in the sunrise. Now the boy is a baby, pink against his mother's nipple. Teleology is an illusion. The song neither starts nor stops, rises nor falls, but moves through the mother's breast, through the tree that is you, through the power lines that draw us together, through the soil that spreads across the earth and greets every footstep. Metatron, you write sorrow as well as joy. You write the cacophony of airplanes slamming into twin towers. You gather hunger and fear like a bouquet and hand it to the gods. You are no hanging tree. You balance unencumbered between earth and sky. You hold stillness in your heart. The boy holds acorns in his hands. I cling to the dodecahedron and trace the pattern that vibrates around me. I no longer try to find where you end and the perfect forms begin, or where perfection melts into pain. Edges are an illusion. The song is real.
Introduction first. So the cube is one of the Pythagorean perfect solids, of which there are 5. Pyramid, the cube, the icosahedron, the hexahedron, and the dodecahedron. When Pythagoras discovered these solids, systemized them, he built a mystical cult around them. He believed that there was something sacred, magical, that the will of the gods could be discerned in the forms of these shapes. And the ultimate perfect solid was the dodecahedron, the 20-sided shape made of pentagons, interlocking pentagons. And it was a secret. And the only people who knew about it were those that were initiated into his geometry cult. The Metatron cube is based on the cube. It's looking at the cube from directly above one of the corners, so that the lines are all drawn out, pulled out into a geometric star shape. And you can see it right there. It's the second from the left. That's the Metatron. That's the traditional shape that a lot of this sacred geometry is based on. So I only have one poem, and it's a response to the Metatron, and it's a response to the Pythagorean geometry mystery cult. It's called Parallax. Approach in parallax. Choose your angle with care. Only care can transmute salt to gold, water to diamond. The Gordian knot will not unravel. It must be cut with a precise stroke. Approach in the oblique. Make your stroke with care. Flatten the unraveled, broken thing. Spread it out into uncaring space. Invade the indifferent space with an intent to find the truth you seek. You who are initiates into this sacred vision will see it with Pythagorean eyes, with eyes that desire. Angles and planes will arrange to disclose the all in all. Nature does not reveal her form readily. You must supplicate. In the dance of the 5 veils, she unfolds, divulges what you desire. The secret place where point meets angle marks the encounter through which desire is made manifest. There you find your truth. Fall into Kepler's madness, folding truth into truth until you lay broken. Dream the mathematician's nightmare. Finally, the universe revealed. Dancing, she says, but for me, there could be no universe. But for me, there could be no universe. Thank you.
My name is James Ryland. I'm currently studying neuroscience at University of Texas at Dallas, and I've made a response from the position of neuroscience and mathematics to the Metatron cube. It is featured over there, and I would encourage anyone who is interested to probably read each panel in the order they're presented. Anyways, so I'll read a statement about it. We're all born with eyes, but we must first learn to see before we may observe the world. Our bodies are the same. It takes time to understand that moving a muscle changes the position of a limb to a new place. But it would probably never learn this if our biology was not ingrained to do this from a primordial time. It would be like trying to pick out our sun from all the stars in the Milky Way. Without a lot of help, it's an impossible task. Anyways, we use the assumptions of Euclidean space, which is exemplified in the Metatron cube, in order to do this. Now, the word Euclidean space, what that means is that if you have 2 lines and you extend them out into infinity, if they are parallel, they will never converge. They will never diverge either. If you send a line outwards, it will never meet itself ever again. But this is not the only space that is possible. And in fact, mathematics and many other sciences have explored spaces that violate these rules, these what seem to be, to us, fundamental rules in millions and infinite ways. Imagine extending your hands upward to touch your toes. It happens in some of these spaces. Some spaces are not even infinite, which almost seems paradoxical. So these may sound like a theoretical exercise, but in astrophysics, the study of our universe on a grand scale, they are no joke. And in fact, we've had to do great amounts of research and study in order to show that on a great scale that our universe is roughly Euclidean. But we have had to accept the fact that on a smaller local scale, our universe is not Euclidean at all. It is pitted with great big bowls and cavities in space, and in fact around black holes, basically ruptures, places where our normal rules of geometry make no sense at all. And in fact, if you were to place the Metatron cube even on Earth, technically speaking, no Metatron cube can ever exist, because our geometry, even in the shallow bowl of the Earth's gravitational pull, is in fact warped. On an even smaller level, a level that we usually don't even think of, on the subatomic level, space is far worse and far scarier to the native human mind. It is a bubbling, discontinuous space where a particle can be here and here at the same time, or from one instant to another. Time, in fact, does not even make much sense to a human. Put simply, we do not live in the world of Euclid or Newton. there are many descriptions of the space we live in, and while Euclid's is not the best, it is actually one of the simplest and most elegant. It gives us generalities that serve us very well in everyday life. It comes with powerful suggestions of an infinite universe and finite lengths that are infinitely divisible. It is arguable that without these assumptions and without these intuitions that we've been biologically programmed with, we may never have searched for the atom or the galaxy. Anyway, my work was aimed at tying the themes of Euclid's space into biology, math, and philosophy. Metatron's cube, for instance, is a beautiful illustration of Euclid's space bridging the gap between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. You start out with a series of circles that their centers form a triangular lattice, and from this lattice you can depict all of the Platonic solids and in 3 dimensions. It's something called isomorphic perspective as opposed to perspective view, but they're all represented there. And interestingly enough, this triangular lattice can be extended out indefinitely. You may make a lattice of infinite length, and you may make a Metatron cube of infinite size, nested and layered in many other Metatron cubes. So this ties very closely to the themes of Euclid's space. The fractal, which is the third from the left, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with what fractals are. Fractals are figures where a shape is repeated infinitely on many different levels. There are different variations of fractals, but this fractal is actually very simple. It is, if you stand very far away, all you'll see is a dot. As you get closer, you see that dot is in fact divided into many small triangles with dots around the vertices of those triangles. It in fact forms another triangular lattice. If you step even closer, you find that the large dot, the sort of galactic dot, disappears, and all you have is this triangular lattice and even more subtle tile work within tile work. I felt this effect was very good for illustrating the themes of Euclidean space. You can have a vast range of scales and vast order, but be unable to see the different orders at one level or another. Anyways, so to the first panel, which for some reason I put at the last in my explanation, is a series of smudgy, rather uninteresting dots. But you'll notice they're in a triangular lattice again. Now, what that represents, and that is actually pulled from a scientific experiment, is one single neuron and how much it fires at any point in space when a rat visits that point in space in a small maze. These are called grid cells. They're part of very, very long ongoing studies. They've been known about for 40 years, if not more. They don't get as much press as something called place cells, but I'm not going to go into those. Anyways, grid cells are quite wondrous and unique things. They are a literal representation of Euclidean rules. They exist not only in a regular spaced grid, but multiple cells will have multiple sizes of grids. So you end up with a fractal representation of Euclidean space within our own brains in a place called the entorhinal cortex. It is very useful for previous animals for foraging and surviving, and it was very useful to us too. And it still is very useful to us. We do not know what they're used for yet entirely. We are still studying them, but they are a clear representation of Euclidean space in our brains. In the final panel, I fused all 3 images. I started with an overlay of the Metatron cube on the grid cell lattice. And you find that if you do it correctly, and you have to step very, very close to the picture to actually see it, you'll find that there's a perfect overlap, not quite perfect, I didn't have the scaling right, of the Metatron circles and their centers with the centers of the activation of the grid cell. And I place that inside this sort of the edge, the circle in the middle of the fractal image that I have, sort of to imply that not only do we have these Euclidean assumptions that, stem from not only our biology, but from our philosophy, or maybe one stems from the other, but they have profound ramifications on how we think of both the world we live in and the orders of the world, both vastly greater and larger than us and vastly greater and smaller than us. And while Euclid's space may not be the best description of our world, it has served us very, very well, much like a fairy tale's morals will serve a child very well until adulthood, when they are capable of understanding the more complex world.